Hello and welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. We're back to talking all things artificial intelligence on the show today. Courtesy Amit Adarkar, the CEO of research firm IPSOS in India. Over the last couple of years, the firm has set up a plethora of AI tools and solutions for its clients and says that its biggest transformational priority in this year is to skill and enable its employees to leverage the power of AI. So, how has AI changed the way Ipsos works? How has it helped clients? And what can be done to unlock and harness its true potential? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Amit Adarkar. Amit, welcome back to Melt. So, first question, what were the most surprising findings from your survey on AI perceptions?
Well, I mean, you always knew through the work that we've done in the past that people will be a bit concerned about what AI can do in terms of their job security or how it's going to threaten what they do. This time, the big surprise for me, and especially a market like India, is not only there an acknowledgement that AI will disrupt, but surprisingly, there's also a bit of a positivity which captures that if there's a disruption, if I have to learn new things, in fact, it's a good thing. So that is a big surprise for me because, for technology, and especially if I look at Gen AI, which is fairly new, hardly 2 years old, for a lot of people to acknowledge that, it's going to do something to me and my career and my job. So I think that awareness, as well as the fact that it's for the good, that feeling, that's a bit surprise for me.
So, in your book, Nonlinear, you've spoken about how John McCarthy coined the term AI in 1956.
Yeah,
So, it's been
yeah.
around for 50, 60 years. But it's suddenly reached a tipping point in the last year or two. What is this tipping point? Is it the launch of ChatGPT?
Well, partly yes. I mean, I'll sort of answer that in two parts. So one thing is, for anything new to get adopted, the three conditions need to be met. So one is access, then there is affordability, and finally applicability. With AI at this stage, access is almost universal. And if I contrast it with, let's say, when mobile phones were launched, they were so expensive. The airtime was so expensive that bulk of the population did not have access to mobile phones. AI, especially with ChatGPT, it's free. Its access is universal. It picked up 100 million users within few weeks. And the third thing is applicability. It's applicable to all facets of our life. So I think these three conditions have come in beautifully for AI at this stage. And the second part is Gen AI is obviously, that's a big game changer as compared
It's
to
a very
AI.
seductive form of AI.
Exactly, because it talks like you and it walks like you. It's human. And especially if you look at GPT-4o, that's like human and it's multimodal. So, it sort of hears you, it sees things, you can talk like a friend.
So, this might be the genuine tipping point.
Exactly. So I think for me, in fact, I wrote about it in my blog that for humans, I think talking is more natural than typing most of the times. We also don't do things which are only text and only images.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to you, I can show you a picture, we can discuss that, I can play something for you, we can listen and then discuss. So humans are multimodal when they converse. And for the first time now, with GPT-4o, AI has become multimodal.
Mirroring that human ability.
You can stop, you don't have to wait for the typical chatbot mode where you finish everything and then the other person talks. Here you can interrupt, you can talk, you can switch topics. So it's very much human.
Your report says that people in Asia Pacific are more optimistic about AI than their counterparts in the West. So here's my question to you. Are we being naive about being optimistic, or is the West being excessively cynical? Which way do you?
Well, it's a mixture of both because obviously you're seeing this global north, global south kind of differentiation. There are multiple reasons. The age profiles are very different. The average European country is much older as compared to, average Asia Pacific country. I mean, though you have Japans of the world, which are technically, more on the developed side as compared to Asia Pacific. But I think age demographics, it makes a big difference. In general, whenever we looked at people's opinions about AI, the younger lot is a bit more positive, and to that extent, the Asia Pacific countries, most of the Asia Pacific countries, benefit because of that. They also increased privacy concerns in, let's say, European countries, which don't exist to the same degree right now. Legislation is a bit weak in our part of the world, so I think people tend to see the advantages much more as compared to, let's say, European countries. And that, in a way, reflects the positivity around AI in these countries.
Okay, we keep talking about AI and jobs, that AI is going to impact jobs. How is AI impacting Ipsos, the work that you
In a
do?
big way, I mean, we obviously are part of the market research
Is your
and
job under
consulting.
threat?
I think I believe that all jobs could be under threat, but they also may not be under threat. It's a function of how all of us evolve. I guess anybody who refuses to evolve, the risk is significantly
Which means
higher.
your job is under threat anyway if you refuse to
Yeah,
evolve,
so
AI or no
I
AI.
listen. I tend to be an eternal optimist. So I think for me, every threat is also an opportunity. I mean, I would actually rephrase what you're saying, and I would say that each job now has more opportunities.
Okay.
Now, if you shut your mind to everything and refuse to change, then that opportunity could become a threat. But if you get into it with the right intentions, with the right kind of attitude, and if you're able to put in a little bit of a hard work in reskilling, I think it's more of an opportunity than a threat. So it happens across all levels. I think everything is going to be,
But give us more specific examples. At Ipsos, how is AI changing the game in the
well, in a big
workplace?
way. So within the industry that we compete, which is the market research and consulting industry, I would say that we are one of the bleeding edge or leading edge kind of companies. So we started investing right after ChatGPT sort of became commercially available. And so that extent, we have been working on an internal initiative for the last 1.5 years. Um, but because we are a responsible corporate entity, we are a listed company, and obviously we deal with data, and whatever we provide to the clients, it needs to have a certain stamp of guarantee, validity, all of that. So I think for us, a lot of the efforts, especially last year, have been towards making Gen AI within Ipsos more responsible and safe to use. So we have an internal sandbox, we call it Ipsos Facto. It's not yet widely available to clients, but all of us are using it. So for example, we have around 20,000 employees globally, and almost everybody uses it all the time. We look at the monthly usage, we look at the daily usage, and the idea is to actually try out things and make sure that, because it's a safe system within Ipsos, so to that extent, we have control on what data goes into it. Because I think one of the reasons why AI tends to hallucinate is because you have no control on A, the algorithm, B, the data which is used to train. So this is Ipsos data. So at least we know that the input is high quality. It's not open source chat GPT, which talks to all kinds of data sources. So I think this is something that we've nurtured within Ipsos. We work across more than 15 models. So let's say all the Google models, all the OpenAI models, they're all part of the ecosystem. So we've been training using Ipsos data, and our people are checking things out. So Ipsos Facto delves into the data and comes back with a point of view. And then a senior researcher will look at that sort of summary and say, is that making sense? Is that what a good researcher, if he had the capability to look at all the data, is that something which is close to that? Now, that training and that sort of safeguarding is critical. This year onwards, the focus is much more on exposing Ipsos Facto to clients and say that, we do a lot of research for you. You have your internal data. Now, if we have a trained Ipsos algorithm, model, and if we give access of this platform to the data set that the client has a sort of way of curating data.
And what are clients asking you, for instance, on the AI
Well, I
front?
mean, I think the reaction from the clients has been phenomenal, because I think one of the challenges we have is that we do so much of research, but then you tend to go by what's happening today or yesterday, something which happened 1 year ago,
The
something which happened
recency
5 years.
effect, recency
That
bias,
goes
all of
away, and
that.
you lose out the longitudinal nature of the data, because it's fascinating to see how things have changed. But humans can't sort of keep track of all the data. So to that extent, I think the response has been fascinating. There are three broad applications that we are using. One thing is discovery, which is that there's so much of data already existing within Ipsos, within the client organization. Can you mine through the data and come back with ideas? Maybe some new innovations which can be launched, some learnings, tracking some of the brand parameters over time. So that's more the discovery part. The second is testing. You can test things without testing. So let's say, hypothetically, I've done, let's say, 100 concepts for the client and I've tested that. Right now, I have the data for the concepts. I know how the concepts are done. And then you can use that data to simulate and say, tomorrow I launch, the client were to launch the 101st concept. use the learning of the 100 concepts that you already tested and say, okay, I think it looks like it will do like this. Now, is that conclusive? No, it's too early for that. Is it indicative? Certainly yes. And the third part is more, I would say, curation, where the client might want to sort of have a business issue, but we already have done so much of work. So can you look at that and come back with hypothesis? So I think these are the three buckets that we're building solutions. And now they are getting launched as solutions. We already launched our first solution, which we call as Explorer, which is more a discovery solution. And over the course of next few months, we'll be launching a slew of solutions.
Amit, what are iterative sciences and how are they going to impact the marketing discipline?
Two words, iterative and sciences. So science assumes that it's based on some framework, it's based on some thinking.
Replicability, scientific
Exactly,
principles, all of
exactly.
those.
There's some validation, some data to say that, yeah, this is the way things work. And iterative because the idea is to keep on testing things and keep on getting it better and better, right? So, for example, I talked about how you can look at the data which has been, let's say, last 100 concepts, last 100 products, and work out a predictive system based on the past experience. Now, obviously, the first time you do it, maybe it won't be as accurate. So you go back to the model and you see, okay, so what's not getting us to beyond 80? Then you do some experiments, you test it out. Maybe that 80 becomes 85. So you keep on making the system better and better in terms of prediction, in terms of insight.
And marketers are going to have to acquire this skill.
Yes.
For sure. Because that's going to be a key component of marketing research and marketing.
Exactly. So it's based on constant feedback and it's about continuous improvement. Okay. But done in a scientific way.
Amit, now let's come to your book, Nonlinear. In your book, you make an interesting comparison between the period of the classical Renaissance and the modern day or the digital Renaissance. You also say that this epoch in technology is completely different from the previous four in its non-linearity. Why is this any different? Why is it not just an extension of previous eras?
I think as humans, we always tend to focus a lot on recency, what's happening today and yesterday, and we then miss out on what has happened over the multiple millennia. See, if you look at our existence on the planet as a bit of a clock, right? What we are seeing in the last 50 years is like a second, maybe a second or two. Bulk of the time we have spent, as hunter-gatherers, which was the first epoch. And there it was a fight to survive. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, that's pretty much the physiological thing. I want to stay safe. I want to get food for myself and, my clan. And that's pretty much it. And to that extent, technology, which was used, which could be as basic as a stone axe, that is just to protect yourself and grow and, and that actually on that clock, world clock, almost 23 hours will be that part. Now, those things are coded into our DNA and our genes, whether we like it or not. We have that primal instinct. The next one, which is maybe 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, we've started harnessing natural resources like water, steam, or, just to make our lives better. And that on the clock, that will be maybe, 40 minutes, 45 minutes more. So the fascinating thing is that till 1950s, which is where the third epoch begins, almost out of the 24-hour clock, 23 hours and 45 minutes, the only tech we have used is the tech which will reduce our physical efforts and make our lives busy. We can do more things, but we spend less efforts. That's it. Our brains were not involved a lot in most of these activities because the activities is physical. I think with computers and calculators, we started having access to tech which will also which reduce our mental load, cognitive load. So, for example, I don't need to remember my tables because I have a calculator, right? I don't have to sort of write down manually things because I can feed it into a computer and it will store it. So it started helping our brains. By and large, things were positive. I think after internet came, and especially now, which I'm with Gen AI, which I'm calling as the fourth epoch, what is changing is that nowadays technology is helping us, supposed to help us more in reducing our mental load as compared to physical load. There'll always be a better way of transporting going from A to B. But then we have cycles and cars already. It might save some time, but we don't have to walk for a month to go from one country to the other country anymore, right? So the nature of technology is changing quite a bit. Now, when we dealt with physical technology, it had by and large much more benefits as compared to negative aspects to it because it reduced physical
saving.
Yeah. But now with the fourth epoch and with Gen AI, the challenge is that yes, it reduces mental load, but because the way our brains are wired And because of this legacy of so many millennia where brains were not engaging a lot in terms of taking help from technology, it has caused a bit of an overload. And I think all of us struggle to manage our time. Despite more tech, we struggle more. Attention spans have gone down. There's a lot of research which says that not only the attention span in terms of how many minutes or seconds can I focus on an activity that has gone down, even the quality of attention has gone down. So, things which require a lot of efforts, like reading a book. Typically, reading a book will require sustained attention. You can't do 20 other things. But if you're watching something on OTT or watching something on television, you can do 20 other things, and you do 20 other things, which means that quantity of attention has gone down and the quality of attention has shifted from less of sustained and more of intermediate. And one of the basic characteristics of our brain tends to be lazy, because the brain can operate in two modes. You can call it system 1, system 2, typically, or you can look at it as a effective mode and efficient mode. So efficient mode is I'm watching TV, I'm glancing at something, I'm talking to somebody. So multitasking, right? That we don't have to devote a lot of attention to it, but we can do many more things. We can't do sustained attention. Whereas reading a book is 100% I need to be focused. Now, because of these changes, our brain gets confused at times, and attention suffers with this entire thing. Now with Gen AI, fourth epoch, let me come to the latest epoch. Now we have a tech who also doesn't look like tech. So for example, if I'm using a computer, there's a computer, there's me. They're two different things. I'm using it, but they're two different things. It's a mobile phone, I'm holding a phone in my hand, but I am me, this is a phone. With Gen AI, it's all over, right? You can't even figure out, we keep on hearing about deep fakes, and I talked about GPT-4o. You cannot figure out who are you talking to. So, which is a bit of a dangerous situation, because once you have technology which is not part of you, you can keep it aside and you can continue. But here, you can't see the technology.
There's a quote in your book, Amit, that says the danger is not that computers will think like humans, is that humans will start thinking like computers. All right, I want to go to the next question. You've created something called the desire framework that you talk about in your book as a sort of solution or a coping mechanism to deal with this AI onslaught. Could you give us a brief overview of the desire mechanism?
Yeah, sure. So, it's actually quite logical. It's something based on my own experiment and my own experience. They're simple things. For example, desire stands for 4 words. So the first one is delinking. And, I talked about how attention spans are becoming a problem. So at times it makes sense to just take a step back and delink, take a deep breath, change the task that you're doing, put some controls on maybe the gadgets that you use. As far as possible, don't use tech if you can figure out a solution. So, if you want to add 2 numbers, instead of taking the phone and opening a calculator, you can just add the numbers.
Maybe use paper and pen, the old school tech.
So I think it's almost like when you look at physical health, you need to do certain things to keep our muscles and everything fit. So here, brain has needs the exercise. The next part is simplification, which is at times you tend to complicate things quite a bit. You need to break it down into simple things. Use a bit of a prioritization tool, because all of us carry humongous to-do lists. Half the things on those lists are not just relevant, and I've done this. I've learned to manage my Outlook calendars better. We just keep on putting a lot of meetings. In my work life nowadays, I have a tendency of asking, do we really need to meet? Why should we meet for 25 minutes to discuss something? If you can just drop me an email, I can respond, and that's done. So that's the simplification part. And my submission is that the moment you do start delinking and simplifying, hopefully you'll start training your brains a bit better, using the brains a bit better, and hopefully saving some time as well. And that saved time can be used for the other next 2 stages. So invest is the other stage.
So we have delink and simplify. What's the next part?
So you save the time, then it's invest. So maybe a tendency to use the time to do something constructive. I talk a lot about something called as diagnostic reasoning. That's what our brains are good at. We reason. But if you rely on technology too much, then we don't reason, because for everything there's an answer. And Gen AI, for example, can be used to summarize something. But I think it's wonderful if you do it. Also get Gen AI to do it, and then compare the notes. You learn something about Gen AI, you learn something about yourself. And then sort of the 4th phase, which is reskilling, because I think with Gen AI, you asked me earlier about threat versus opportunity. And my answer was that if you don't do anything and if you stay exactly the way that you've been for the last 10, 20, 30 years, it is a threat. But if you keep on sort of learning about Gen AI, start using it, then I think that's a good thing. So reskilling is the other thing. The other sort of point I make as a part of the reskilling part is that as humans, we don't differentiate between knowledge and application. We look at, I know 20 things, so I know a lot. But now with technology, you can potentially know 200 things by simply Googling. The point is, what do you do with it? And I gave some examples that a lot of us know, for example, how to ride a bicycle or how to drive a car. But very few of us, unless you're automotive engineers, you'll know how the car works. So how a car works is knowledge, but driving a car is a skill. So this is a world where skills are much more important than
Knowing
just
when not
knowledge.
to drive a car is wisdom.
Yeah. And maybe walk if you want to go for short distances. Exactly.
Okay. Baseball coach Yogi Berra said it's very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. Right? Let's take a shorter horizon. Your top 3 predictions if we were doing this interview 5 years from now.
So my sense is that if you look at applications of Gen AI in simple things like connecting with something, because today it's the time is a sort of problem with everybody. You don't get to meet physical people all the time. So even a personal mood assistant, it's something which is just around the corner. That's my sense. A lot of creative tools which allow people to, for example, express their opinions, express their creativity. Maybe you have an idea, but you can't express it.
Filmmaking.
Exactly, video making. Like video
Sora,
making
for
is something
instance,
which is just about. I think those kind of things will make a big difference, because I think all of us as human beings always want to do things, but we don't have the time, we don't have the training at times. And the third part is the education and skilling part, which, again, you want to learn 20 things, but you can't. Like, for example, I talked about the GPT-4. It can be a good translator, because you can interrupt. So you can actually, ask something in Italian, it answers in Italian. You can say, let's switch to English and continue the conversation. So I think skilling, even learning language, it can be a good language coach. So I think these are the small things which typically, don't get talked about. But my sense is a lot of the immediate innovations will come around these basic things. The need to talk to somebody, the need to learn something and, make myself a better person, the need to express myself creatively. Those are the ones.
Amit, thank you once again for talking to us at Melt.
Pleasure, Suresh. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
And with that, it's a wrap on Melt today. Keep following Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, I'm @Suvenk on X. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.